Okay, this is another checkpoint video for Game in Progress synSpace drone runners. I guess you'd call this a weekend update. It actually represents a few weeks. A few weeks of Sundays and Mother's Days. So I have two devices here today. One is my Google Fi phone, which is a Nexus 6P. And so far I'm liking Google Fi better than Verizon. And this guy, who is a Nexus, I think he's a 10. He's a Sanyo, and he feels a little underpowered CPU-wise. Anyway, I only have a few things to show, and I probably won't show them in any great order, but there's a new option. Inset joystick, and you can see it's on here. I'll turn it off. And you can see this is the normal location for the joystick controls, but you can now, you can do that and put them up a little higher. And depending on the shape of your device, that might be a more comfortable position for your thumb tips. And I want to stress, you want to be careful to be actively holding your device at all times. This 6P is such a wonderful phone, but it is so slippery and heavy. It's real easy for it to just fall out of your pocket or flip out of your hands. So be careful. No. I won't do that. Okay, what I want to show you here. I should probably make myself a script. This is not going to be a very good film. But what I wanted to show mainly was the work in the scripting. So if we go to Nerd, oh, no, that's now on Starmap. So import Starmap from Google Drive is now on the Starmap options screen. And I have this one called Game NPC, which again is not a final script. It's just as I work on developing the API. So it got loaded. You can see I've added some more messages that this script doesn't know about. So you can see that I've got some progress there. But what I just did was loaded from my G drive, and it is now available as TempMap 7223. So I press the map button to load it, and I try and find TempMap 7723. TempMap 7723. TempMap 7723. There we go. So I select that, and I explore it. So I've actually started a server session that is in support of my map in progress. This is not a released map. This is just a map I'm working on. And you notice this map has some messaging. First announcement in PC. Second announcement. And there'll be a third announcement. Okay. So not very impressive, but that was a cutscene. Okay, so that was actually in Lua. Oh, fourth announcement, I forgot. So that was because this star map, not every star map, includes Lua script, and that Lua script declared a scene, and that scene played a cutscene, and that cutscene was actually performed by a Lua coroutine, and that coroutine was defined in a Lua table that represented the scene. So if we come over to my Google Drive, it means that without a lot of glue code, I now have a situation where in Lua, okay, come on. Sorry, scrolling slowly. Okay, in Lua, a single star map file could now have multiple scenes in it. And a scene would be a little adventure, like, I don't know, saving a planet from a meteor, or fighting a pirate captain, or, something. And you have as many of those on a map as you want, but it's probably 10 or less. But for each one, you just define a Lua table. So, and in this table, there's only a couple of things that you have to have. This name, state, and host Suriname. I require those. And pretty much everything else is just up to you. So I've got this local function called initState. I could have used a global function and passed this scene table as an argument if I thought I was going to always do the same thing. But this gives me the opportunity of doing a special initialization that's only for this scene. So if there's 15 scenes in here, they could each have their own initialization functions. But if they all needed to do exactly the same stuff, because this is your design, this is your star map, you don't have to use any of this formatting. I'm just creating some boilerplate that I'm trying to evolve into a position where it makes it easy for me to create little stories. And then so it defines some other support functions. Probably update displays is a pretty common kind of concept that you might want to have, because if your star map's going to have any sort of, little user panels on the screen, you're probably going to want to update them at least every time the state of the scene changes. And you'll probably want to abstract that into a single function like this. And then here is an example. I'm able to define a function which I'm pretending is a cutscene. I'm calling it a cutscene, rather, the welcome cutscene. And it's very simple. It just waits and announces, waits and announces, waits and announces, waits and announces. And it's these waits that make it interesting, because normally this is going to wait for 10 beats, and because I'm perverse, I'm using beats instead of seconds, so that the AI actually gets faster when the music is playing faster. I don't know, it just appeals to me. So anyway, so it waits 3 beats and makes its first announcement, and you saw those announcements go by with approximately that time in between them, and which means that this function, when you call it, it's not going to return. It's not done for 33 seconds. And as a programmer, you know that you can't be calling functions that hang for 33 seconds. But because we're going to run this as a coroutine, it turns out we can. So continuing down, just remember that we've defined this cutscene called welcome cutscene, and it's a function. But within that function, we can put any Lua code we want. We can have complex branching instructions. It doesn't have to last 33 seconds. It can be as short or as long as you want it to be. It can call other functions within it, and so it can have recursive subdomains of animation. I mean, in theory, this is a very powerful structure, because it is so simple and straightforward and as close to Lua as possible. But it could take a minute and a half for something like this to play out. And so how do we do that in an environment like this, especially where there's several scenes running at the same time? Although cutscenes, you really shouldn't run multiple cutscenes at the same time, because I'm thinking of this ultimately really being a cutscene where I take control of the camera and I start moving resources around on the board, and then there's some chat, and maybe some faces appear from space to be incoming radio messages. I don't know, but anyway, classic. You go in to meet the king. He tells you about the dragon and asks you to kill it, kind of stuff. Anyway, but let's skip that. So now the other interesting thing about a scene is just a collection of data, right? And some of that data is code. Some of that data is functions. Well, what you can do is, we've seen before in this that your real interface to the game, your Lua code is not running all the time. Your Lua code is invoked specifically in response to a message from the game engine, from synSpace to your Lua script, the onMessage function. You'll be called on that function when something interesting happens, and you're expected to promptly return from that function, not spend 33 seconds. If you do spend 33 seconds before you return from that function, life will be okay, but all the other scenes on that map will have been blocked for those 33 seconds. But the people, their little spaceships should still fly around. It's just the scene itself should suck. But one thing a scene can define is handlers for messages. So I used to have a metaphor where I would call, well, never mind, you don't care. I put in a little bit of boilerplate into this Starmap file, and I'll have that in all my Starmap files probably, that takes the messages from the onMessage handler and doesn't even really look at them. It just steps through all of the scenes that are defined on that map and says, hey, scene, do you have a handler for the launch message? You do? Well, hey, here's a launch message. And so scenes directly declare exactly the messages that they care about, which is hopefully a subset of the total number of messages available. So the scene ends up being simple and kind of readable. So when I get a launch message, I init state and I play the cutscene. When I get a beat, which happens regular intervals at the beats per minute setting, I call this thing called the scheduler, and I call this thing that maybe is going to send scene state updates to the other copies of this script running on the other players' machines, which will only happen if I am the host of the scene. And that's what makes scenes interesting, that within a play session of 4 people in a server, they're all running the same map. There may be 4 scenes running simultaneously. Each scene needs somebody hosting it as the source of truth to make sure that everybody agrees when the monster's been killed. And that defaults to being the moderator player, but doesn't have to always be the moderator player. The way scenes get started, an individual player can request of the moderator saying, hey, I'd like to host scene 15, please. And the moderator is the one that checks that nobody else is hosting it already and tells everybody, okay, Bill here is now hosting scene 15. So that's all coordinated with the moderator. But once it's been established that Bill is the host, then he is the host and he is the source of truth for that scene. And he's the one that decides if the goals of that scene have been met or not. Got a little brain problem here using mouse on this old computer instead of fingers. Likewise, he cares about if something gets killed. That's usually an important state transition moment. And he reacts to any incoming send data. That's how state is passed around between scenes. And this is cool because it's a peer-to-peer scene. This scene can send messages to other copies of this scene. So yes, they are going to the map, and the map does get a chance to look at them, but because of the use of special keywords, you control who sees it. So you might have a message that you want to be seen by all scenes on that map, because that could be kind of cool. But usually you'll just want to have peer things. So basically your design can be on a per scene basis. So you may, on this scene, you may have a complicated series of messages, and on this other scene it may just be, the number 1, 2, and 3. And on this particular map, I have a couple of in synSpace, there's an options panel. On the options panel, there's a tab called Starmap. On that Starmap panel of the game options, you can add additional commands. Your script can add additional commands. And I've added 2, a start and a stop command. And this is how I react to the moderator having given those commands. But then, in addition to scenes, I realized I could also have freestanding bots, AI players. So this is an example of a robot player definition. And I originally thought robot players would always be initiated by a scene. So you would actually be starting and stopping a scene, and then the scene would do some stuff, and then it would decide that it needed a bot player, and it would spawn the bot player, and then it would kind of it would be the go-between for interactions with that bot. And you can do that, and I think I will do that, but I like this also. So in this case, And even in that case, I think I would still have a table per bot. So just like there's a table per scene, I have a table per bot. So if this map has a total of 25 characters on it, I would have 25 tables like this. Each one has a unique ID and a separate name, because names may not be unique. And this guy, there's just regular NPCs, and they could be anything from a stationary building to a full-on boss character. But at one level, which I'm currently calling the Nemesis level, they appear to the player as if they were another player. And what I mean by that basically is that they have a thumb. And so in addition to being a little ship flying around just like a player ship, they have a little thumb, and you can put in all this synthetic information. And just because I've got it canned, it could definitely change. I mean, you've got Lua, you can do anything you want. But anyway, so I can give him a custom rank, and I can give him a name, and I can give him the asset ID of the face I want to use, and the ship I want to use, the shell I want to use, and his current number of weapon, shield, and engine pods, because that's the lingua franca of synSpace. So if this were an RPG, those would be things like, strength, wisdom, etc. But it's in space, it's these things, and so even my NPCs are defined in terms of these attributes. And these guys, of course, do not necessarily live with the same limitations that you live with, and hence you can have a boss character who is much more massively powered than any individual player can be. And thus, a boss could be very challenging for an individual player to dominate, and or requiring extreme customization of the player's ship to be successful, or the collection of a special weapon or a special shield or something that only exists on that map, perhaps. Or, and this is what I want really, is that it's much easier to do with 2 people or 3 people or 4 people, and so there's a lot of cooperative play opportunities. But again, that's totally up to the map designer, and not all maps have to be the same. In fact, they're better if they aren't. Okay, so again, this is a bot definition. So instead of having that cutscene function, he has a function called AI. And again, I guess I have to call this AI. Yeah, if you want to use my code, you'll have to call this function AI. And this is basically a script that starts as soon as the bot is spawned. And what it does in this case is not all that exciting. It makes an announcement. You feel a disturbance in the forest, and it adds the bot name because it wasn't working, and I needed to put that on there so I could debug it. Then it waits a couple seconds, and then it calls this new function, create NPC. Oh, so you see, this is old crap. I don't need this anymore. What did I do? Oh, hell, I hit... I didn't know you could do that. Is that F11? Cool. Backspace. So I abstracted that to an AI support function, create NPC, which I pass bot to, and the way this works is that pointer called bot reference is going to be this bot boss. It's going to be whatever bot you're working on. It's going to be its table. So I have access to all the information in here when I pass it to create NPC. So create NPC does all the hard work of saying, I've got to make a thing, it's got to look like this, it's got to have this name, it's got to be this position, and it's going to start with no brain at all. And then there's going to be a point in time where I give it a brain, and I guess that's going to be create NPC, isn't it? And it's after this call that it appears in game. And because I included the pilot info, it automatically builds a thumb at that time. So that all happens the moment this create NPC thing happens. Then this is not very exciting. He waits 3 seconds, announce such and such. He waits 3 seconds, and then he leaves. And that ends his coroutine. So his coroutine doesn't really live forever. This ideally would be, while alive, and then go through an AI functionality, which is what it will be, but that's not what it is right now. Okay, so what else did I want to show you? So let me just show you what Create NPC looks like. Well, or the coroutine. Yeah, let me talk about the coroutines part. So this is super boring unless you're a programmer, and even then it's probably boring. A Lua coroutine is a big, long function that you provide that probably has a loop in it, like, for example, my wait function, which is actually a really small function, but it waits for time to have elapsed. So it, by definition, waits a long time. It's inside of a while loop, and it doesn't terminate until that much time has gone by. But while inside of that loop, and any coroutine you write, somewhere inside of it, you have to use the special coroutine yield function. And as a programmer, what that basically does is it just returns from the function right then, just as if the function ended. But this whole thing is happening inside of its of a little virtual coroutine space that has its own stack and its own little limited bit of memory, although mostly it's looking at the same heap, so it has full access to all the regular variables you have in your program, blah, 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 blah. And it's not a thread. It's just a coroutine. It's all completely cooperative. So what happens is the script up here, and in particular in this thing called scheduler, what it does is it calls the Lua brain function or the Lua cutscene function and just says, hey, run as long as you like. And when you feel you've run a reasonable amount of time or you think you're going to be bound on something, you call this yield function. And that will return to me. And I will remember a reference to you. And on the next beat, I will resume you, and you will pick up on the line after that yield command. And your stack will be where it was, and all your local variables will be where they were, and everything. As far as you're concerned, you just never stopped running, except that in reality you did. But what happens is this way: each beat, I get one. I run for up to one yield on each scene and each bot's brain, well, on each coroutine. And I maintain a list of coroutines, and if a coroutine ever really ends, if it ever really does return, then it gets off my list and I don't run it anymore. Anyway, so it's cool because it's simple, but it allows you to just write your cutscenes or your bot brains just as one long, easy to read script, and that's the holy grail for me. Remains to be seen if it really does unlock any creative potential, but I like it. So I'm just kind of, you can still pause on this and look at it later if you care. So when this is my wait function, right? So when I say wait 3, I'm waiting 3 beats, and all I do is I assume that there's this global, only one coroutine is ever running at a time. I have references to a handful of coroutines, but only one of them is running. And just before I resume it, I set this global variable to point to the one I'm about to resume. And that way I don't have to pass it around through all these function calls. And anybody who wants to can just say, if the global variable is me. So anyway, so I do check that it's not nil, because if it's nil, then something horrible has gone wrong, and I shouldn't be here. But all I do is while count is greater than 0, I loop, blah 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 blah, and the only thing, so this would go really fast, you would think, but the only reason it doesn't is because inside I have a yield, and I know that the system is set up to not resume me until the next beat. Now, I could have a system that did 10 yields per beat or something like that, in which case I'd have to be a lot smarter here and probably look at an actual time value, or at least a real beat counter value. But I was doing something quick and dirty, and it turns out it worked great. So I'm not going to change it until I have to. Don't be like that, kids. That's bad design think. Not good design think. Okay, what else was there to show today? Oh, so anyway, so getting back to this guy. So now if I if I summon Pirate Jack, that was that new command I added just for this one star map, then it will start playing the Pirate Jack brain. So I've now instantiated Pirate Jack. He's shown up as a purplish looking guy with a devil face. And he's got a, and he said some boring things, like I said, tired of waiting, goodbye. And technically he's gone now, so I should remove him, but really he's just kind of sleeping. Notice he has kind of this gear icon, which I'll probably change to a robot face, since Caminator made those fantastic robot heads in Arcadia, which the Arcadia license allows me to reuse. I tried to, for example, draw my own little robot face yesterday, and let me just say the Caminator robot faces are tons better than that. But here's my little synthetic guy. You'll notice that I told you I could override his rank, but that was a lie. I don't have any way of doing that quite yet. I'm trying to decide if I want him to live, if I want the NPC to live in the space of real ranks or, fake ranks. And I think fake ranks would be cool. And also note that he's called Krell here instead of Pirate Jack. I kind of working out where I want the actual name to appear. But anyway, so he looks like he might be an actual other player, and he has stats. And as I was saying before, you could vary those in real time. So if he kills you, you could pump the win. Yeah. Anyway, just rub your nose in it, and you can have a language rating, and you could, in theory, I mean, if I don't do anything to stop it when he injects chat as a Nemesis level bot is allowed to do. It will obey the language rating filter. So I don't know how the language rating of a bot would be set other than by the Starmap author just setting it. Other than, I mean, I could preload it and read every possible thing that the bot could say and assign them a language rating. But I think there are higher priority things to do. What else has changed recently? Well, this did change. The fact that when there's not enough to fill the screen, they're all at the bottom bugs me, and it leads to sort of a dissonance and flicker when you go back and forth that I feel you don't see otherwise. I moved some stuff around, so if you've gotten used to the way they were, I moved them. What's below that? Oh, reconnected drone. It's kind of important. Oh yeah, banished Pirate Jack. So Pirate Jack is here, right? So he is on my radar as a purpley kind of guy. Now he's not the purple player. He's a whole nother player. You can still have 8 players, and you can have 4 Nemesis level bots, and so a total of 12 full-on player-like entities at any given time. So it's kind of small. He is using, just the really baby stock ship. Okay. And I can kill him in various ways. I will do it with a homing missile. Like shooting ducks in a barrel. And I don't know that I can really kill him yet. I can give the illusion of killing him, but I don't think his. I mean, I know his script doesn't pay any attention to his death. Just barely touching him. There he goes. So anyway, that's obviously a very early bot, but the fact is he exists now. It is possible to do that. So I think there's a real law of accelerating returns about to happen, which makes me kind of excited about pursuing the integrated world editor, possibly even to defer first release yet again to have that. So the way I kind of see that happening is somewhere around here you would indicate that you wanted to, in fact, this clone button might go away and become an edit button. And I'm going to do it right now. And what that would do is, and again, I don't even want to take you out of multiplayer mode to do this. I want to, as much as possible, leave you multiplayer mode, so long as it doesn't somehow, I mean, I could see a thing where you're like the dungeon master and you're actually changing the world in real time for the other players to, experience it in a cooperative, happy way. But I could also see it where you're just some snert that wants to trick people into coming into your thing, and you want to have a different kind of copy of the map where all of your walls are transparent and all the bullets don't hurt, and you just want to be an idiot. So that's why I generally want people to know before they join a server whether or not they have that exact same map. Having said that, though, what was I talking about? Wasn't I actually gonna? Oh yeah. So for the live editor, there's if you're familiar with the top half of the map file, I guess I'll just show you the top half of the star map. So the top half of the star map is what was in the old synSpace star maps, which just describes the physical universe and doesn't know anything about scripting. And it's divided into sections. It's an INI file format, so the sections have names like the credits section, the spawn section, the colors section, the panes section. So colors and panes, basically, you may have a barrier that when you bounce into it, it's going to hurt you. Well, I could have just right there said, well, it's going to hurt you 5 points. But what I found was better for me was to say, this is pain type 3. And then in a separate pain table, I would say, pain type 3 hurts you 5 points. And that way, if 5 points turned out to not be the right value, then there was just one place I had to change it instead of 63 zillion places for each individual barrier. And ditto with colors. Also, when I wrote this, there was a real serious limitation in color space, which does not exist at all anymore. So, it remains to be seen how that is affected. Then the barriers, lazy of me, I know, but I only in the old game allowed you to have horizontal and vertical barriers. And I think I even force you to enter them in some sort of order here. I'm not sure about that. Maybe the order is not important, but you do provide the horizontal and the vertical things separately, which is one reason why I want to have a graphical editor for barriers, so that you don't have to realize that they are as lame as this internally. And then power-ups, basically you're saying which power-ups are going to be available on this map and where they're going to randomly or not randomly appear, if at all. And then zones. And zones have a lot of possible special uses. I mean, a zone can be, a home base. It can cause pain to other people when they come into it. It can recharge you. It can bounce some ships off of it, but other ships are allowed in. It can... that was wrong. That was a barrier. Sorry. The zone can hurt some ships and not hurt others. It can prevent weapon fire from some... Well, I think if it prevents weapon fire, it always prevents everybody's weapon fire. I think that was a fairness doctrine I imposed early on. But anyway, zones are actually kind of more important than is indicated there. Properties I'm still working on. It's basically an idea where I want to be able to have variables. It's like the guy who wrote the script says, well, at this part of my script, where this happens, I could hurt the guy a lot, hurt the guy a little, or, just out and out kill him, or just have no pain at all. And I can see how there's some fun play value in any one of those outcomes, but the nature of scripting is I have to pick one right now. Boom. But rather than put in a hard-coded number, he would declare a property in this properties table, and the properties could be pretty much read as written by both the game engine and the script, is the idea. And I'm leaning now more towards a situation where part of the initialization of the script in the Lua, it would call into a game function that would set the properties. And then the Lua would know the properties because it was the one that set them and retained them to the degree that it felt it needed to. And the game would never have to parse this property. There wouldn't be a properties table in the map under that scenario. And I think that'll actually be better. But I go back and forth because there's also like the number of teams. It's like, does a map have to be hardwired to this map is a team map, this map's not a team map, and this map has 8 teams and 4 teams and 2 teams or 1 team or 0 teams? Or is that a late binding decision that the moderator should pretty much always have the ability to do that? Or should it be kind of half and half, that maps that want the moderator to have the skill should always, set up the command and have a function to implement it? And it'd be so common, I would have a helper function to do most of it for you. But I don't know. If you design the thing with only 2 bases, it's not going to do you any good to have 4 teams in your capture the flag game if your capture the flag game is going to be base specific. So there's a lot to be said for just letting the map declare it. And I guess the full argument there then would be let the map decide, and if the map feels that there should be some variability, let the map give an option to do that. Or the thing I was getting to in the first place with these properties was the idea was that these properties would be editable without having access to the Lua script somehow. So in the visual editor half that I'm about to talk to you about, which doesn't actually exist, it would have access to these variables. You could talk about them there, and that way I could start with your map where you made that one design decision, but you knew that it was something that maybe other people would like to change. And rather than put up a moderator option to let me change it dynamically, which could lead to a whole bunch of options that would be overwhelming to the player, I can just say, well, I'm going to clone a copy of your map, and all I'm going to change is this one property. And now it's your map, and it's still credited to you, but I've modified it to use this property instead of that property. And that that was the reason why I wanted to have this property section. But honestly, I think that the real thing that was holding me back there was I felt I was not allowed to export changes back to the Google Drive. And while I think I still have troubles preserving your comments, I think I will now actually be able to both import and export, which means you could load somebody else's map for which you never had a Google Drive copy and then export it to your Google Drive, and it would be part of the open source. These assets, these player created assets are, fully shared, which, that's what I say it is, but oh guys, it's been a long video already, and a boring one, no doubt. So anyway, but the point is that you can now have scenes, and you can have fully autonomous bots that just wander the universe and pick fights or collect power-ups or whatever it is your star map needs them to be doing. Still a lot of work to be done before I can have a lot of interesting scenarios, and I'll probably start with a tutorial. But that is recent updates, other than all of the little things that I know I changed that I can't just remember off the top of my head because it's been too long. I don't think there's any new options. Yeah, I still... What is that? So something happens here. I'm not sure what it is. Yeah. So you see, it's like it's... Okay, and then it did. So what is that? Open script window? Works great. So I don't know what that problem is. I don't know, but that's happened to me before. Oh. Okay. Well, let's wander into the wrong zone and be punished for it. Or does this map do that? I'm a red player. Yeah, I'm being punished. Boom. See, zones are cool. The end.